There are 4 marketing toolkits which an entrepreneur can use in conducting market research. These are the sales data mining, the focus group discussion, the observation technique, and the survey research. Let us see how each one of these can be used in market research. The first marketing toolkit is sales data mining. Mining sales data will reveal a lot of insights about customers. But first, the raw sales data must be organized into meaningful patterns of measures so that we can evaluate the past and predict the future. The sales data can be organized in 3 ways. First is the data array. Second, the frequency distribution. And third is the cross-tabulation. We will use a case to illustrate how data can be organized into a meaningful form. The case is about selling hot dogs. A researcher observed and recorded the following data in a store selling hot dogs. 1. A boy aged 10 bought 2 hot dogs at 2 p.m. 2. A girl aged 8 bought 1 hot dog at 4 p.m. 3. A man aged 26 bought 3 hot dogs at 1 p.m. 4. A couple, man and wife, aged 30, bought 2 hot dogs at 8 a.m. 5. A boy, aged 14, bought 5 hot dogs for friends at 3 p.m. 6. 3 girls, aged 18, bought 6 hot dogs at 6 p.m. 7. A girl, aged 5, asked mom to buy her 1 hot dog at 11 a.m. Mom, aged 27, bought 1 for herself. Twin boys, aged 7, asked their older brother to buy them 4 hot dogs at 12 noon. Older brother, aged 14, bought 2 hot dogs for himself. 9. 2 teenagers, boy and girl, aged about 15, bought 2 hot dogs at 1 p.m. 10. 5 children, about 9 years old, 2 girls, and 3 boys, bought 5 hot dogs at 12 noon. 11. A man aged 27 bought 2 hot dogs at 9 a.m. 12. A woman aged 30 bought 3 hot dogs at 10 a.m. 13. 3 boys aged 13 bought 5 hot dogs at 4 p.m. The most logical way to arrange the data is to arrange them chronologically from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The data can also be further chunked into 2, 3, or 4 hours. The hot dog customers can be further classified into male and female customers. They can be subclassified into small children, 12 years old and below, teenagers, 13 to 19 years, and adults, 20 years and above. Let us array the hot dog sales according to time from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in chunks of 2 hours. After arraying and classifying the data, the researcher can now do a frequency distribution and construct a frequency table. This table organizes data into groups of values describing one characteristic. Adopting the selling hot dogs case, the frequency distribution will look something like this. Graphs of frequency distribution and relative frequency of distribution are useful because they emphasize visual patterns that are not easily discernible in a table. 3 types of graphs can be used. They are first, the histogram. The histogram is also known as the bar chart. It consists of a series of rectangles. Each bar is proportional in width to the range of values within a class and proportional in height to the number of items falling in a class. An example of a histogram is shown utilizing the frequency distribution of our selling hot dogs case. The second graph is the frequency polygon. Although not as popular, the frequency polygon is another way of showing organized data in graphical form. A frequency polygon is constructed by marking with a dot on the frequency on the vertical axis corresponding to the values on the horizontal axis. These dots are then connected with a straight line to form a polygon. Applying the same case example data, the frequency polygon will look like this. Third is the pie chart. Another way of presenting data in an illustrative fashion is the pie chart. It's a circular graph divided into sections that represent the relative frequencies or magnitudes. The pie chart rendition of our case is as follows. The frequency distribution table that we have discussed is obviously very helpful. However, we have to be able to interpret the data in a better way, and this is where cross-tabulation comes in. Data analysis must be able to explain why some data fall at one extreme of the distribution while others are at the opposite extreme. To be able to do this, the researcher must expand the tables into two or more dimensions. This results in what is known as cross-tabulation. Employing the selling hot dog case, a cross-tabulation table can be made. This is illustrated as follows. The second marketing toolkit is the focus group discussion. The FGD is one of the most common qualitative research tools. The FGD is effective in extracting consumer and non-consumer experiences regarding products, places, or programs. The FGD has applied research potential in other business areas. It is also used for the purpose of preliminary insight generation. The focus group discussion can be used to address substantive issues, such as understanding consumers' perceptions, preferences, and behavior concerning a product category, obtaining impressions of new product concepts, generating new ideas about older products, developing creative concepts and copy material for advertisements, securing price impressions, obtaining preliminary consumer reaction to specific marketing programs. The FGD is an interview by a facilitator of a small group of people. It normally lasts from 1.5 hours to 3 hours. It should be a focus group discussion, meaning that the participants should be knowledgeable about the topic. They must be able to meet the objective set. The topics must be clear and precise. Proper attention should be given to focus group discussion planning. There are 4 key decisions to be made. Number 1 is respondent selection. Number 2 is sample size. Number 3 is data gathering. And number 4 is data analysis. Respondent selection includes the definition of the respondents, the classification of the respondents, and the screening of the respondents. It's important to note that the group should be homogeneous in terms of demographic and socioeconomic characteristics. In FGDs, sample size refers to the number of sample groups and the number of sample respondents in each group. The number of respondents per group should range from 6 to 8 depending on the skill of the facilitator and the topic. A group of less than 6 is unlikely to generate the momentum and group dynamics necessary for a good discussion. A group of more than 8, however, may be too crowded, resulting in a passive participation of some respondents and a discussion which is not cohesive. Data gathering methods in FGD involve the selection and preparation of the venue and equipment, the formulation of the discussion agenda, and a facilitator who is very skilled in moderating and possesses the ability to draw out significant insights from the participants. Data analysis includes the integration of the information gathered, as well as some observation on respondent behavior, and a listing of recommendations and report writing. Let us go to the 9 steps in conducting a focus group discussion. First, develop the research objective. What is the research all about? Second, determine the participant profile. Who are the most knowledgeable participants? Third, determine the appropriate token or compensation for the participants. Fourth, develop a participant screener questionnaire. 5. Recruit the participants. 6. Select a good facilitator. The key qualities of a good facilitator are kindness with firmness, involvement and encouragement, complete understanding, flexibility, and sensitivity. 7. Develop a facilitator's discussion guide. 8. Arrange for the venue and logistics. 9. Analyze the results of the focus group discussion. In analyzing an FGD, the researchers should compare and contrast all points raised by the different respondents and where they were coming from. The researcher must take note of the areas or points where the participants strongly agreed or disagreed about an issue. The researcher must also write down quotations that seem particularly relevant to his or her identified objectives and must group similar comments together in order to identify participants' preferences. In the final analysis, the objective of the FGD must be addressed and conclusive insights must be drawn to help the entrepreneur improve his or her business. The third marketing toolkit is the observation technique. The observation technique is probably one of the best ways of gathering data about customers in their natural settings with the least intrusion. One simply has to watch people in their natural habitat and assess how they behave. Again, it's important to set the marketing objectives. By definition, observation technique is a systematic process of recording the behavioral patterns of people, objects, and occurrences without questioning or communicating with them. Market researchers using the observation technique witness and record information as events occur and unfold before their very eyes. Here are some examples. To illustrate, if a product distributor wants to know whether or not his or her products are being offered enthusiastically to shoppers by salesperson, the researcher could post a field researcher inside the store to observe the salesperson's behavior. The researcher could install a hidden camera in order to observe how customers are buying certain products. It's very important, though, that observations are documented and tallied for proper analysis. Before the observation technique can be successfully used as a data collection tool, several conditions must be met. The conditions are as follows. First, the needed information must be observable or inferable from the behavior that can be observed. For example, Observation research would not be able to explain people's motivations. Second, the subject matter contains some sensitivity needing detached observation. An example is the purchase of very personal items. Third, the behavior of interest must be repetitive, frequent, or predictable in some manner. An example is the buying behavior of supermarket shoppers. Fourth, the behavior of interest must be of a relatively short duration. An example is how fast food consumers select and buy their food. What are the advantages of the observation technique? First, it allows researchers to see what customers actually do, rather than rely on what they say they do. Second, it allows researchers to observe customers in their natural settings. Number three, it does not subject the researcher to the unwillingness of customers or their inability to reply to certain questions. And finally, fourth, some information is better gathered quickly and accurately through observation. What are the disadvantages of the observation technique? First, the researcher can only see the outside. He cannot feel the inside. Second, the researcher cannot go for the reasons behind the behavior. Third, the researcher can only focus on the here and now. It cannot cover the past nor cover the future. And finally, observation technique may border on the unethical because the respondents do not have their agreement. There are two different types of observation technique. The first is human observation, and the second is mechanical observation. In human observation, humans observe the events as they happen. In mechanical observation, mechanical devices are used to record events for later analysis. Let us summarize the guidelines in conducting observation research. They are 1. Determine the research objectives. 2. Prepare your pre-observation tips. Prepare and clarify your observation points and issues. Prepare your observation materials. Identify the persons to be observed. Position yourself strategically without being noticed. 3. Focus on what you want to observe. Is it customer demographics, customer buying behavior, customer usage behavior, or other customer information? 4. Observation proper. Observe keenly and listen intently. Be mindful of the surroundings. Be alert for obvious movements. Be sensitive to subtle movements. Look at the customer when the customer is not looking. Do not be obvious. Observe and take note of other things that you feel are important. And finally, 5. Post-observation tips. Review your notes. Make sure that flow is correct. Tabulate what needs to be tabulated. Interpret and analyze your data. Make a formal report. The fourth marketing toolkit is survey research. Survey is the most preferred instruments for in-depth quantitative research. These respondents are asked a variety of questions. These questions are about their personal information, their motivations, and their behavior. These questions are conveyed verbally, in writing, or electronically. There are 3 main classifications of survey research: the telephone interview, the personal interview, and the mail interview. The most popular type of research is the usage, attitude, and image survey. It's intended to derive market awareness, market size, and market share, product usage and product preference, customer interest, and customer image. There are three important concerns in planning a survey. First is sampling technique. Second is getting the sample size. And third is designing the questionnaire. Let us first tackle questionnaire design. Designing the questionnaire is the most sensitive phase of survey planning. The researcher must follow a process in designing a questionnaire. 1. Specify the information needed. 2. Specify the type of interviewing method. 3. Determine the content of individual questions. 4. Design the questions to overcome the respondents' inability and unwillingness to answer. 5. Decide on the question structure. 6. Determine the wording of the question. 7. Determining the order of questions. 8. Identify the form and layout. 9. Reproduce the questionnaire. And 10. Pre-test the questionnaire. Some basic rules in question formulation are used. 1. The questions in their totality should be able to elicit all the necessary information required in the research. 2. Each question should be clear, unequivocal, not ambiguous. 3. Each question should cover one topic at a time. 4. Each question should be presented in a neutral manner. And 5. Each question should be translated into the dialect which the target respondents are familiar with. Next, let us go to sampling techniques. Sampling techniques are classified into probability and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is where the respondents are randomly selected from a population. It allows the researchers to make generalizations on the findings. For simple surveys, the lottery method is the most common form of probability sampling. Other forms of probability sampling are systematic, stratified, cluster, and multi-stage sampling. Non-probability sampling, on the other hand, are techniques resorted to when it's difficult to estimate the population of the study because they're mobile or transitory in a given location. The findings cannot be used to generalize the population. The following are the different types of non-probability sampling: convenience sampling, purposive sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. And last, let us go to sample size. Another concern in survey planning is the determination of the right sample size. The three basic sample size determinants are: 1. Data variability of a proportion. 2. Confidence level in the estimation process. And 3. An error in the result of the estimation process. The first determinant, data variability, talks about the dispersion of data, or how widely spread the data is from a central point. To illustrate, if all students in a given school prefer a particular brand of juice drink, then there is no variability. It is homogeneous in this case, and a sample size of 1 is enough to know the sentiments of the student population. In the second determinant, the relationship states that the higher the confidence level desired, the bigger the sample size needed. The current industry standard is 95% confidence level. Therefore, if the researcher uses 95%, what he or she is actually saying is that he or she is willing to tolerate being wrong in the process of data estimation 5 out of 100 times. Lastly, the third determinant states the relationship as follows: the less the error margin desired, the bigger the required sample size. Since it is a margin, it's expressed as plus or minus a certain percentage. In the example of the students, if 30% say they prefer brand A juice drink, and the error margin is plus or minus 10%, then what the research is saying is that it is accepting the 30% to be as high as 40% or as low as 20%. Assuming that the population is unknown, the formula for computing the sample size is as follows. Let us go to the steps in conducting a survey research. 1. Develop the research objectives. Determine what you want to know and learn. Define the goals of your research. 2. Determine your sample. Identify who and what kind of people you will interview and where you're going to find them. Determine the number of target respondents you need and how you're going to choose them. 3. Choose the interviewing methodology. From the different interview methods, such as face-to-face, by phone, or by mail, choose the appropriate technology to use for your research. 4. Create your questionnaire. In drafting your questionnaire, identify the key information you will ask from your respondents. Design your questionnaire based on the process given above. 5. Pre-test the questionnaire. Determine a similar profile of target respondents and test the questionnaire. Be mindful of the comments of the respondents so that you may revise the questions accordingly and appropriately. 6. Conduct interviews and enter data. Plan and execute the implementation of your survey well, including areas to go to, routes to take, time to conduct the interviews, etc. Be professional in conducting the interview. Ensure that the data are entered legibly. 7. Analyze the data. Review your notes. Organize the questionnaires for more orderly processing. Tabulate. Use graphs and do statistics. Write the report including the insights gained from the results. We have just gone through 4 marketing toolkits. The first is sales data mining. The second, focus group discussion. The third, observation technique. And finally, the fourth, survey research.